Excellent. Welcome to the Men's ADHD Support Group. These are our monthly get-togethers where we bring in experts in their field of expertise, and we have conversations about things that affect men, our spouses, the world that we live in, and how we can be better and how we can navigate this thing called ADHD and neurodivergence as we've kind of started deciding to take care of ourselves. And one of the biggest issues that we see in the group is men, and they're like, I have ADHD, and they're asking all these questions, and then they talk to their spouses about these issues, and their spouses are kind of like, yeah, I've been saying that for years. And there's a lot of emotional labor that's gone into play that often because of our self-awareness, social awareness issues, we see this tropes out there as men, why didn't you take out the trash? But for us, there's a big difference, and we need to be able to address that and have that conversation. And that's why we have brought Dusty on tonight. A little bit about her. She is a master certified ADHD coach and certified doula based out of Vancouver, Canada. She works with adults from all walks of life using a trauma-informed approach that centers accessibility, inclusion, lived experience. Dusty is passionate about helping people understand and manage their ADHD in ways that really support real-life change. So again, Dusty, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so talk to us about your presentation tonight and go ahead and share and let's get into this.
Okay, let's screen share. Okay, so I'm here to talk about the unequal load in ADHD partnerships. And so I'm referring to the domestic load. I work with a lot of different people, but I do work with a good number of men in sort of that middle phase of life where they may have young children and they have partners, and usually like both partners have jobs. And a really common thing that I'm hearing from a lot of these men is feeling a sense of helplessness and frustration that there's like trouble in the relationship. Maybe like the ADHD has been having an impact on the relationship for some time, as ADHD does. And the more that they start to learn about the ADHD, they want to make things better, right? And so they're trying to help more. They're trying to pick up the slack. They're trying to contribute to the household, or, just kind of making things better on the home front. And what can often be really frustrating for these men is they often feel like, despite their best efforts and the effort that they're putting in, they're getting like pushback, or they're getting like a negative response, or just that it's not making a difference, right? The difference that they thought it would. And that's really distressing, right? It's really distressing to try and to care and to feel like you're still getting it wrong, like you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And so I see this a lot, and I thought that it would be good to kind of talk about some of the things that can be done, and some of the reasons that this happens. So I have broken my presentation up into a few parts. I thought maybe we could talk first about what some of those common issues are. And often I'm talking here, a lot of the clients that I see who are having these issues are like in heterosexual couples, so like men married to cis men, married to cis women. But I do see that these issues also exist in same-sex couples or like gender non-conforming couples. So I have some like client stories from those types of couples as well, but largely I'm kind of referring to the male-female dynamic, and we're going to get a little bit into ways that gender stereotyping and gender socialization can impact some of the things that we're trying to change. So we'll talk about what the issues are, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about why it is that these folks might not be getting the response that they're looking for and what some of the sticky points could be. I'm going to give you some tips, some do's and don'ts, some ideas for things that could help you get to the other side of this, and then I'm going to share some resources. Marriage is hard, or like partnership is hard. And we see that folks with ADHD have a divorce rate of about 5 times the national average. There's some really well-known issues in ADHD partnerships where one partner has ADHD and the other doesn't. But I would say that these issues can also exist in partnerships where both partners are neurodivergent, because as I'm sure many people listening know, like you can have like kind of clashing like neurodivergencies, right? But especially in that type of relationship where one person has ADHD, and in this case, maybe it's the male spouse or the male partner, and the other one doesn't, we often see what Melissa Orlov refers to as like parentification. So we get the non-ADHD partner like over functioning, and they're kind of like parentified. So they start managing the ADHD spouse or partner as if they're like another child. And that is like always a bad dynamic, right? It's bad for your sex life, it's bad for your romance, and it leads to feelings of resentment, right? So we see, yeah, that these issues with one partner feeling unsupported, feeling like they're taking on more of the load when it comes to childcare and household management and that, just domestic life. And so I think this can contribute to just like a dynamic where both people are feeling unsupported and unhappy, right? Because the partner with ADHD doesn't want to be treated like a child. They do want their efforts to be recognized. They might feel really kind of like blindsided by some of the things that their partner's not happy about that they didn't notice, especially, when we're talking about someone who's either undiagnosed, got untreated ADHD, or maybe they're new to their diagnosis. Like they don't know what they don't know. And so they may not even have realized if if ADHD is preventing them from being able to sort of take information in and they're distracted a lot, they might not even realize that some of these things are issues, right? And then there's a whole host of other things we can bring in here. This is mainly what I'm going to focus on today, but I think there's other ways that ADHD can negatively impact a relationship, like when it comes to mismatched sexual dynamics, right? Dr. Ari Tuckman wrote a book called ADHD After Dark, where he talked about the fact that some folks with ADHD find themselves very hyposexual. They're distracted. They don't have arousal. Some people are like really hypersexual. So, like mismatched intimacy needs are a big issue. Finances, we know that people with ADHD can struggle more with finances. And so that can put a strain on couples. And then like impulsive behaviors, right? So whether there's a lot of video gaming or phone addiction or other kinds of addictions, all of these things can put pressure on the relationship. And we know all of these things are super common in ADHD relationships. But even if we take ADHD out of the picture, the most common thing that couples fight about is housework. It's sex, it's money, and it's housework. I think certainly this is what I see a lot with my male clients, feeling frustrated and sad that their partners aren't happy and that their partners are feeling unsupported. And then even more frustration when they just can't get it right. Right. So I see a lot of male partners, male spouses trying to pick up that slack and trying to contribute more. And then a really interesting thing happens, right? Their wives aren't like, oh my God, thank you. I'm so happy. Like everything's better. Often they get met with resistance, like you're doing it wrong, or, oh, like, what do you want, a medal? So I wanted to talk a little bit about why this might be. And hopefully I've done this correctly so it'll look cool. But bam, resentment. Okay. If you know anything about like couples theories and relationship therapy stuff, we know that resentment is like a huge killer of relationships. Again, regardless of ADHD, if you look up anything sort of related to like Dr. Gottman and stuff to do with bids, we know that like healthy couples respond to a good amount of each other's bids, meaning like if I have a partner and I go, "Oh, look at that bird out that window there." And my partner goes, "Oh yeah, that's a neat bird." That's like a bid. If my partner goes, "Whatever, I don't care about birds." Well, they've just rejected my bid, right? And with ADHD, we might struggle both ways with this. Like we might not notice our partner's asks for bids, like our partner making us bids. We might unintentionally reject our partner and we might get rejected a lot more. And this can lead to like some low-lying resentment. And now if we add in the fact that like if one partner has taken on more of the domestic load, like more of the cooking, the cleaning, the housework, whatever, and that's been going on for maybe years, it might just be the case that honestly there's just some like resentment between the partners or like maybe on the part of the non-ADC partner that like needs to be addressed, probably in therapy. Same with like past other hurts, right? I mean, I guess this is kind of not that different, but we see this all the time, right? That like people don't fight fair when they're kind of like upset with each other. If things have gone on too long, sometimes it's hard for people not to make it about other things. And so if you have a partner who's holding on to something and your partner's like, you never take out the garbage, and you start taking out the garbage and things don't get better, like it might not be about that. And that's kind of not your fault, right? Like that's a horse of a different color. That has really nothing to do with the garbage. But like, I think it's good to ask yourself, like, is this what this is about? Or is there something else that needs to be addressed? So unmet needs or needing to process. Again, everything in column 1 here that I'm talking about, I think it's important to recognize that sometimes you can do everything right. Like you can be the total package and still get delivered to the wrong address. You can improve, you can do what your partner asks, you can show up how your partner's asking you to show up. But if there's been a long history of conflict or there's resentment, sometimes nothing that you do is going to make it better. And that's not on you, that's on your partner. And I want to acknowledge that because I think it's so damaging for people with ADHD to try really hard and to do their best and to still not feel acknowledged. And like the truth of it is sometimes like it's more about therapy, whether it's as a couple or separately. And I think it's just like it's important to recognize that like sometimes you're doing the right thing. And like, that's not really what it's about. So I wanted to say that off the top. What are some of the other reasons, though, that a man with ADHD might struggle with helping with the domestic load and maybe get some pushback or not get the response that he's looking for, or struggle to like figure out how to show up as an equal partner? So I mentioned this earlier, but like if historically this has been the dynamic, then you've got a spouse or a partner who is over functioning, right? Maybe they've taken on that parentified role. Maybe they are just so used to having to do it all that like they aren't, it's kind of almost like a thing around control, right? Like they're already over functioning. And if they have a lot of experience with running a household or managing the children or like doing the dinners, and you're new to it or you historically haven't done it, you're going to be a lot clumsier and maybe like a lot slower. And it might be hard for that partner who's over functioning to like give up that control. Also, strict systems, right? So I mentioned earlier that I kind of wanted to talk about gender socialization. And here's the thing, when we're talking about like hetero couples, like a man and a woman, like we know that gender socialization exists. What I mean by that is like it's the first thing we ask pregnant people, like, oh, is it a boy or is it a girl, right? And we have ideas about what little boys and little girls are like, even to today, right? And we kind of push them towards different types of toys and different types of shows and different types of experiences. It's neither here nor there. It's just the way that it is. Like our brain wants to organize things by all of us humans, our brains want to organize by categories, and one of those categories is gender. As we grow up, we're going to receive a lot of very subconscious messaging about what it means to be a man or a woman. One of the things that you receive as a message about being a woman is that you should be tidy and organized. In fact, this is why we see so many women with ADHD really struggling with their ADHD, because they feel really deficient when they can't keep a clean home. I would say way more so than a lot of the men that I see. The inability to stay organized and to keep a tidy home can often be really devastating on self-esteem for women. And so if you have a female partner, chances are she might already be better at organizing and cleaning because that's how she's been socialized. And so we get these situations where the female partner may have already set up all the systems in the house and she knows how they run and she's really good at running them and maybe you aren't. And so even if you're trying to pick up the slack, if you can't adapt to that system, you don't understand it, or you're not doing it right, sometimes there can be pushback. And so I saw this with a client of mine. I had a client with like 2 or 3 young children, and a big point of conflict between him and his partner was the bedtime routine, because he did the bedtime routine differently than she did. And when he did the bedtime routine, the kids got to bed later and she was not happy with that. And so it was really challenging because there he was showing up, doing his part, like helping out with the kids. And he really enjoyed doing the bedtime routine and he really enjoyed doing it his way. But it was very challenging. His partner like was not accepting of the fact that his way of doing bedtime was going to be different than how she did it, because she historically had done everything for the children. And so she was like, well, the kids need to be in bed by this time. I also saw this with another client that I had, and because of his ADHD, it made it easier for him to have things out or to have things like on the walls, like I've got this clipboard. But his partner was very against visual clutter. She didn't want, and actually I've actually heard this more than once from one man about his female partner, like, oh, she doesn't like clutter, she doesn't like too much stuff on the walls. Well, one thing we know about ADHD is that we do better with like visual reminders and with like curating our environment to cue us. But if the other partner was sort of historically in charge of running the household and keeping it clean, and they were not open to having things be a certain way, so they had strict systems. And I think there can be like a real clash there that can make it harder for a partner with ADHD, especially when that partner is male and the other partner who's historically been running these things is female. I think that can be like a really kind of a sticking point for them. Lack of trust, right? So unfortunately, as people with ADHD, sometimes we make promises we can't keep. Like sometimes it's been the case that maybe these partners have said in the past, like, I'm going to change and I'm going to help out more. And, you know, depending on how long they've been together, like that other partner might have heard that a lot. It may be hard for her to really believe that things are going to change this time. And internalized ableism about how things should be done. So I also see this a lot in ADHD, non-ADHD relationships, as well as like just people with ADHD who have a lot of non-ADHD people in their family or in their circle. You know, we do get a lot of messaging about what a house should look like, how children should be cared for, how finances should be run, what dinner should look like. We get a lot of these messages, right? And so people have this idea that there's a right and a wrong way to do things. In fact, there isn't. It's personal preference, right? There's no wrong way to keep your home. There's no wrong way to do your dinners. There's no wrong way to do bedtime or kids' recreations. And I think sometimes what we come up against is, especially when we're new to our diagnosis ourselves and haven't really learned to advocate, we may find that we get pushback on wanting to do things differently because the other partner may have an idea in their mind that, like, that's not how things are supposed to work, right? And I'm not even just talking about the non-ADHD partner. I work with a lot of clients who are in that kind of middle of life age where they have young children, maybe they have aging parents. They're sort of anywhere from their early 30s to their late 50s. And it can even be hard for them to accept that there's no right or wrong way to do something, right? So we talk about cooking, we talk about feeding ourselves or feeding our children, and people get really stuck on this idea that it has to look a certain way. And sort of letting go of the need to do it like the right way can really be helpful. But if you have a partner who's stuck on that, then you've got another hurdle in the way to you being able to contribute, right? And I see that sometimes, I'm going to say this is a little different than resentment. Sometimes the issue is like simmering anger over the emotional labor or the mental load. And so I'm going to go on to define that in a minute. Anger over weaponized incompetence. So I'm also going to define that term and talk about why it may or may not be relevant in anybody's scenario. And then a lack of understanding of how to support an ADHD partner, or maybe even a lack of interest, right? Again, depending on how long things have been like a bit tough in your relationship, there may be, and unfortunately I've seen this, like an unwillingness to accommodate because sometimes partners push back and they go, well, I've been picking up the slack for so long and now you're telling me that I have to do even more and accommodate this person. And I think we have to know how to advocate well, because sometimes people do feel like, oh, this is just one more thing that I have to do, right? Okay, so what do we do about it? First, I'm going to define some of these terms actually, because I think they're important. So if you've never heard the term emotional labor is the work involved in managing one's own emotions and expressions when interacting with others. The term originally came to us from like sort of work, customer service related things. So it was initially defined in relation to work, like when serving customers or clients, right? So, that saying like the customer's always right. So if you got a customer being a jerk to you, emotional labor is managing your own emotions as well as trying to like manage that person's experience. Why is this relevant? Because when it comes to especially hetero domestic partnerships, women are often unconsciously given the burden of managing emotional labor, managing everybody's emotional well-being as well as their own, right? And again, that's just a thing that relates back to gender socialization. It's nobody's fault. It's often just the way that it is. It's not like the men watching this presentation are going to their wives and being like, you're taking on the emotional labor. No. And like, it's not like she's like, I'm going to take it on. It's a very unconscious thing that happens if you don't address it. And if you don't sort of like talk about it openly and recognize when it's happening, right? So a good example of that is, let's say that I'm married and my brother-in-law, my husband's brother, is a real jerk. Okay. And let's say that like maybe he makes uncomfortable comments about, I don't know, trans people. And now let's say that we're hosting Thanksgiving dinner. And let's say that my sister is big LGBTQ activist. Okay. So like we're already setting up for like a dynamic here. So let's say we're hosting this big family dinner, and if my brother-in-law makes some unfortunate comments and my sister picks up on those comments and tension is building, me as the woman, as the host, I will often feel responsible for trying to make sure that everybody's feeling okay and having a good time and trying to diffuse tension. And so we see this really often, that women just kind of naturally take on that role of diffusing tension in a social situation and putting out that extra effort, often sort of putting their own discomfort secondary. We don't see this happen as often with men. And again, I'm not saying that doesn't happen ever, or I'm not making any kind of statement about everybody, but generally we don't tend to socialize men as much to be like very aware of like all the emotions of others and to manage everybody else's emotions, right? We're more comfortable letting men center their own emotional experiences, right? And again, this is something that is nobody's fault, but it does tend to happen very early on in childhood. And we see some ways that this can be really bad for both men and women, right? Like when we teach little boys that like it's okay to get angry, but it's not okay to cry. And we teach little girls that it's okay to cry, but it's not okay to get angry, right? Like we're kind of setting up this idea that as we grow up, like certain emotions are okay, others emotions are not okay. And that can be problematic. So that's what emotional labor is. Something that is kind of invisible in the domestic partnership and in the mental load is the emotional labor that some of these female partners may be taking on and have taken on for quite some time. There's also the mental load. The mental load refers to the invisible cognitive and emotional work needed to manage a household or family, encompassing planning, organizing, and anticipating needs. It's the thinking behind the day to day running of a household, often unseen and unpaid for, and can be a significant source of stress. So I think this is also where a lot of these attempts by couples to make things better can break down. Because again, also with ADHD, like sometimes when we don't see something, we don't know that it exists, right? And if we haven't done something or, we're forgetful, we may be more challenged at taking on a good amount of the mental load, right? At the end of this presentation, I'm going to show some resources. And one of the resources is called the Fair Play Deck, which was created by Eve Ensler. Ensler? I think so. Anyway, in it, she talks about how when one person is holding one of the fair play cards, they're responsible for the conception, planning, and execution of that card. And I think that is really meant to address the mental load. So let's say, for example, I think the example she gave is like, let's say that I have a husband and my husband is holding the kids' after school recreation activities card. So if my husband has that card, meaning that he is responsible for that aspect of our domestic life, he is responsible for the conception, the planning, and the execution. So that means that he's not supposed to be like, come to me and be like, oh, when is the kids' soccer game? I shouldn't have to remind him to wash the kids' uniforms. If there's a soccer game, I shouldn't have to put it on our calendar. He is the one taking it all the way from like deciding whether or not the kids are even in soccer class, making sure the fees are paid, making sure the uniforms are washed and ready to go, making sure he knows when the games are and he's telling me, not vice versa. But unfortunately, what we do see is a little bit of this, like often when we see in hetero relationships, when men are trying to step up and they're trying to take more of the domestic load, they're like a little uncertain, right? And maybe like a little intimidated. So they're asking a lot of questions. And that can often feel to the female partner like, well, you're not really helping me if you're like making it kind of like my problem. A good example of this is I had a friend who just had a baby. She had a child my daughter's age and she just had a baby and we were hanging out and she asked her husband to stop at the store to get stuff for dinner and he called her from the store to ask her a million questions like, do I get this kind of chickpeas or that kind of chickpeas? Where do I find the chickpeas? Where's this? Where's that? Like, dude, if she has to be on the phone explaining to you how to grocery shop, she might have well just gone herself, right? And so when we talk about the mental load, it's stuff like that, as well as remembering people's birthdays, remembering anniversaries, letting people know things, doing the organizing. So I'm not married, actually. I'm very happily divorced. One of the problems that I had in my partnership, which had a lot of different problems, I did all the birthday, Christmas shopping for everybody, for my family and for his family. He didn't even think about what he was going to get for anybody in his family. It was just up to me. And if I didn't do it, there were no presents for Christmas or birthdays for his family. But on top of that, if his family ever wanted to plan something, it was always up to me to plan it with them, right? That's his family. But if we were going to go over there for Thanksgiving or we were going to go over there for Christmas or we were going to take a trip together, like I had to do all the coordination because he just wouldn't. And so one of the issues that we have now as co-parents who are divorced is he's continued to be this way. So like he'll not tell me that he wants to take our daughter out until the day of. Like he'll call me in the afternoon and be like, is she around? I'm like, dude, I have so many plans. You have to get in touch with me a week ago. But the other problem is that his family has trouble seeing her because they can't coordinate with him. So it has basically just ended up that now I still coordinate with them because that's the only way my child gets to see her grandparents and her family because this person still won't take any responsibility in being like, yeah, so I'm going to have my daughter on this day. And so if you guys want to go for lunch, like he just won't do it. Certainly I'm not equating like I'm not all men. Okay. I'm not saying like everyone's like this, but I think if we look back at those issues around gender socialization and the fact that sometimes hetero women have just sort of been raised to take this on, if someone's just taking on all that for you and you've never been asked to do it, you've never been expected to do it, it's natural that you wouldn't naturally think to do it. And then let's add in ADHD where anything that's out of sight is out of mind. And maybe you're forgetful by nature or you're distracted by nature. We can see, like from a non-judgmental standpoint, just looking at it, we can see why dynamics would end up this way. And so I'm thinking that sometimes what is getting in the way of couples being able to work better together on sharing that domestic load is that there can be like resentment about the mental load in general on behalf of the overfunctioning partner. And ironically, here's this person, this male partner with ADHD showing up and he's saying, I want to do better. I want to help out more, right? So that should be a relief to the overfunctioning partner. And that overfunctioning partner should be like, yes, awesome, thank you. But sometimes I think they have to work through the feelings of like, I've had to do all of this for so long and it's unfair, right? And I think that that can make it hard for the ADHD partner who's trying to step up to persevere, right? Because we're very rejection sensitive. We need validation, right? We do better with positive praise. And it's really hard to like do your best and just keep kind of like feeling like you're getting, some negative backlash. So I want to talk about one more concept that might come into play here, and it's a bit challenging. And so before I talk about this next concept, I want to say like, I don't want anyone's feelings to be hurt about what I'm about to say. Hopefully your feelings aren't hurt already. I have to address something that might also be coming into play that men who are in this position might not even be aware of. They might not even realize it. They might not even know about this as a concept. And so it's important to talk about because it's something that your female partners have likely experienced, and it is weaponizing competence. If you've never heard this term before, I'm not saying that you are doing this. So like, don't get your back up. I'm not saying that you are doing this, but hear me out. This is sort of a new term. It's something that's obviously always been around, but we've just have language for it recently. Weaponized incompetence, which is known as strategic incompetence, is a form of passive aggressive behavior where someone deliberately performs poorly or pretends to be incapable of certain tasks to avoid responsibility. Essentially, they weaponize their perceived incompetence to shift the burden onto others. This can occur both in personal relationships and the workplace. So I'm bringing this up because there's been a lot of talk recently around weaponized incompetence in the context of men showing up in domestic partnerships. And it's important to understand this as a concept because, like, pretty much everyone I work with ADHD is always trying their best, right? Like, I see a lot of people trying really hard. They're not being idiots on purpose. They're not ruining things on purpose. They're not forgetting to bring home the milk on purpose. They're not forgetting their partner's birthdays or anniversaries on purpose, right? None of that is intentional. And in fact, sometimes they're putting in the effort and still forgetting, right? But here's why this is important to understand. There's a really good book that I love called So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijeoma Oluo. And in the book, the author talks about racial microaggressions. And so racial microaggressions are like all the little ways that a person of color experiences small little racist things throughout their day, like white people making comments about black people's names or making fun of them on TV, white people wanting to touch black people's hair, comments about interracial couples, right? If you're a person of color, you've always had to hear all these little comments and the hurt and the frustration builds up. And so let's say that a person of color meets a white person and they make one of these comments, but maybe they're not racist. Maybe they don't mean anything by it. Maybe they don't even know about racial microaggressions. The thing is that the harm has still happened to that person of color, right? And so we have to acknowledge that anybody in a position of relative privilege dealing with somebody who's in a more marginalized category has the ability to cause harm whether or not they intend it. And I think that most women have dealt with weaponized incompetence. So maybe it's not you, right? Like, I'm not saying that you, as a man out there with ADHD, are doing this to your partner on purpose, but there's a good chance that your female partner has experienced this. And so even if that's not your intention, that might be what's being communicated to her, right? She might have had negative experiences, like kind of what I'm talking about in my past partnership, where male partners just flat out refused to pick up the slack or made the person feel like it should be their responsibility. A lot of the times women don't want to be doing all this extra stuff that they're doing, like when we talk about the emotional labor or the mental load, but they don't feel safe letting things fall through the cracks because they don't trust that their partners will pick up the slack, right? And we see this all the time, right? Like, oh my God, he didn't even pick up our kid at school. He left them on the playground. Like, I've heard stories like that, right? So these are things that women have sometimes experienced when a male partner with ADHD is trying to do better and facing like some anger, some resentment, some pushback. Like, just know that like it could be coming from some of this. While you might not be that person who's, committing weaponized incompetence on purpose, or you might not be that person who is actually perpetrating the harm. There's sort of like these, I think, like gender microaggressions that happen for women like over the course of their lifetime, right? And so they're carrying a lot of that with them into the relationship, right? And you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's not fair because like I didn't do anything, right? Okay, but like I'm from Canada and I grew up in the North. And in the North, we don't have a lot of racial diversity, but we do have a really high, big Indigenous population. And something that I heard a lot of stupid white people say in the North was like, well, I'm not the one who colonized their land. Like, I'm not the one who committed genocide. So why are they mad at me? Right. And I knew a lot of people who really genuinely felt like quite hurt by the fact that like a lot of our Indigenous community didn't trust them. But like, it's not about fairness because it wasn't fair. All these things that happened to these more marginalized groups of people, that wasn't fair too, right? And so we want to, I think, like expand our empathy beyond ourselves and be like, yeah, okay, it's not fair. If your female partner has some like simmering resentment or she's got maybe some trauma, she's just sick of it, it's not fair if it's not your fault and you're really doing your best and you are, putting your best foot forward. It also wasn't fair for her. And it's just more something we want to be aware of as a dynamic. And I think like being a good partner in a hetero relationship when you're a man looks like having awareness of the ways that our society does socialize women to take on more of this role and how it's quite exhausting, right? It can be really, really exhausting for women. And so I think the more that you're willing to be open about this and willing to understand it and it'll make it a little easier, I think, to like manage through some of the pushback or some of the challenges, right? And so I think part of being a better partner and part of how you show up isn't just like taking out the garbage or washing the dishes. It's about like that understanding and like that empathy, right? And and you might be thinking, okay, well, like, what about me? I have ADHD. So in a way, like I'm also marginalized. I'm like disabled, right? Or I have challenges. And like, where's the empathy for me and my struggles? Don't worry. Your struggles are valid. And I'm going to loop back around to that. We're going to get there. Well, is it weaponized incompetence or is it ADHD? And here's the thing, like 90% of the people, like I think that most people are like really, really good and they're putting their best foot forward. Is it possible to have weaponized incompetence and not be aware of it? Maybe, right? I don't know. You have to do that reflecting on yourself because two things can be true, right? I'm not 100% letting y'all off the hook. Like if you have, and my presentation didn't quite play out here, but you get it. If you have historically maybe come from a background where these things haven't been expected of you, or maybe you've had like an easy ride, maybe you always had parents that took care of you, maybe you have had a partner who really loves to take on the majority of the domestic burden, maybe no one has ever challenged you this way. Is it possible that the privilege of being a man is coming into play here? Maybe. I don't know. Only you know your particular situation. But I do think that we all have to kind of like reflect on our privilege and we have to reflect a little bit on like, I'm not intending to do that, but like, am I, right? Like we want to do the soul searching, we want to do the work. And like that's true for me as well, right? There's a lot of positions of power that I personally have, right? Yes, I'm a woman, but I'm a cisgendered woman. I'm a white woman. I'm able-bodied insofar as my use of all my limbs. And so there are lots of ways that I sometimes have to reflect on the fact that like maybe I didn't mean to do a thing, but like did I kind of do it? Okay, right? Like it doesn't make you a bad person. It just means like do a little reflecting, right? Do a little reflecting. Okay, there's something I want to show you guys. It's called You Should Have Asked, but I'm going to skip it in the interest of time. No, I'm not going to skip it because it's really important because I want to get onto what you do about this, which is more important. But I highly recommend you Google this webcomic called You Should Have Asked because it gives a really good in-depth explanation of why this happens from the perspective of women who have been put in this role of overfunctioning. And again, I think the more you can understand it, the more it'll make it a little bit easier for you to get what you want out of changing this dynamic. Because like usually the men that I see who are trying to change this dynamic, they want to make their partners happy. They want they want to be equal partners. They are trying, right? It is so frustrating and they're not understanding like where they're going wrong. So sometimes I do think that it has to do with that foundational understanding of like gender socialization and feminism, these kinds of things. I think if you guys check this comic out, it will be really helpful. Let's move on to what we actually do about it, okay? So some do's and don'ts. First of all, the reason that the first thing that I said is like sometimes it's not even about what you're doing. Like sometimes it's about other resentment and other hurt is because like I really want to acknowledge that when somebody, like especially a man with ADHD, is trying to do better and he's trying harder and he's putting in the effort, like it really sucks if your partner has just like made up their mind that they're out or like then things are not going to be better. Unfortunately, we don't have control over other people. So like sometimes no matter what you do, it's not going to get better. It's on that other person to do the work and do the therapy. If she wants to stay together, she needs to decide that she's going to let go of that resentment and those issues. I've also seen that be the case. You can be the total package and you can get delivered to the wrong address. So let's talk about what we do and don't want to do. Number one, get validation, but not from that partner. Okay. Like if that partner is offering you validation, like, hey, Mark, I noticed that you've been doing the dishes more often. Like I asked you to, like, thank you so much. I really appreciate you that. That's great. But if Mark's my partner and I ask him to start doing the dishes more and he starts doing the dishes more and I don't say anything to him, he might feel kind of like crestfallen and rejected. And the thing is, like, whatever Mark did to get himself doing the dishes more is like legit. It was hard work. He did the work and he deserves that validation. But again, for all the reasons we may have mentioned, your female partner may not be in a place or may not be able to give you validation. Is it fair? No. Is it the way that it is? Yes. You should get validation from your ADHD coach, from therapy, from your friends, from a men's support group. It is really important. And I love giving validation to my male clients who are trying harder because, like, it's awesome. They don't have to do that. You don't have to get better. There's, lots of people who never even try. The fact that you care enough to try and you want to make your partner happy and you want to be a better, husband, father, whatever, like that is really meaningful. It's hard work. And every time that you figure out how to do better, like you do deserve to get validation. But if you are not getting validation from that source, get it from somewhere else, but get it. Okay. I think it's really important to check in to see what part of the task is important or what it means to the person. So I'm going to share a quick anecdote, and there's a gender reversal here. So I have a friend who's a woman and she's married. She had a conflict recently with a partner where she was saying, my partner's telling me that I'm too busy and he wants more couch time. I'm really frustrated because I tried to sit down with him the other night and put on this show and ask him if he wanted to watch this movie. And I tried to do this and I tried to do that. And he kept like turning me down. Like I said, do you want to watch this movie? And he's like, no. I said, do you want to do this? He's like, no. She's like, what the heck? He's the one who said he wanted like, more time together. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But two things. Did you use the term couch time? Maybe he doesn't realize that what you're offering is what you think couch time is, but maybe that's not what couch time is to him, right? Like you're sitting on the couch, but you're pre-planning the activities in the movies. Maybe that's not what he wants. Maybe he wants to snuggle. Maybe he wants to watch hockey. Maybe he wants to watch a board game. Like maybe you're missing the mark and you're trying to give him what he wants, but he's not like registering that as couch time. Like, why don't you ask him what couch time means to him, right? So I think this is also something that happens where like ADHD partners are like, oh, my wife wants me to take out the garbage or my wife wants me to help with the children. But like, I think it merits a conversation about like, what does that task mean to them and which part is important? Because there's nothing more frustrating than feeling like you're doing it and it's like, and she's still like, you're not doing it, right? So like maybe have a check-in about language and about what it means. Make an honest effort to learn what you need to know for yourself. So again, like I have a male client who doesn't know how to clean anything. He has never cleaned a toilet in his life. And he wants to start helping his wife out more, but it's very frustrating for her because he doesn't know where the cleaning supplies are kept. He doesn't know how to clean. And so she's going to do a better job of it. So like, again, coming back to this concept of weaponizing competence, he's not doing this on purpose, but he's like, oh, I don't know how to clean a toilet. I'm not very good at it. And she's like, oh, just let me do it. Two things can be true. So what did we do? We watched some YouTube videos on how to clean a toilet together. If you don't know how to do some things, like you can learn them, because I guarantee you before your female partner was a mother, she didn't know how to diaper a baby. She didn't know how to feed a baby. I see this again, especially because I work as a doula. So when people have a baby, that's where you really see the frustration on behalf of women, because the man is sometimes like, I don't know how to hold a baby, diaper a baby, feed a baby, change a baby. Well, it's neither does she, but she learned it. Well, however she learned it, you can learn it too. I had a nephew, when my baby was born, I had a nephew who was about 14, and I said, have you ever changed a diaper? And he said, no. So here's the thing, guys, going back to gender socialization, I have been babysitting since I was 9 years old. I have known how to change a diaper since I was 9 years old. This 14-year-old boy didn't know how to change a diaper because he had never babysat or cared for a child in his life. Is that his fault? Is it because he's a bad person? No, not at all. But like nobody had ever thought to socialize him that way, to teach him these things, to ask him to babysit. So like as a society, we do start people on this path very early, right? So whatever it is that you don't know, I think one thing that can be helpful in sort of like diffusing the frustration and the resentment is like put in your best effort to learn it. But if you can't, like ask clarifying questions at appropriate and predetermined times. So like when my male client goes to clean the toilet and his wife is in the middle of taking care of the kid and making dinner and he goes, "Honey, where do we keep the like whatever?" She's gonna be like, "Ugh," right? But it's like find a better time where you're sitting down and maybe having like a family meeting and you actually go, "Okay, I'm gonna take on the job of cleaning the bathroom. That's great. One problem I have is I don't know where we keep XYZ. Can you tell me that?" Ask once at an appropriate time. When your wife calls and goes, "Oh, don't forget so and such's soccer game." Like that's not the time to be like, "Right, okay, yeah, and where is it again?" And again, I want to acknowledge that like it's much harder to be organized with ADHD, so we want to get the support that we need to show up organized. Create ADHD friendly structures to notice without being told or asked. So the comic that I didn't show that I would love for you guys to read talks a lot about the fact that like often women have this experience where men will say, "Well, you should have asked for help." Or like, "Oh, yeah, I'll help. What do you need to do?" That's guys, that is the worst thing you can do. Let me tell you what a bad idea it is for you to be like, "What can I do?" What I don't want to stereotype, but I'm going to make one sweeping statement about women. What women want is for you to notice. They want you to figure it out. They don't want to have to tell you because that's emotional labor. That's the mental load, right? I think especially in these like domestic hetero partnerships, like it means a lot to our female partners when we're both at home, we've both got home from a long day of work, the house is messy, the dishwasher needs to be unloaded, the garbage needs to be taken out. If you take out that garbage without her having to ask you, if you unload that dishwasher without her having to ask you, if you notice that she is tired and like the kids are stressing her out and you go, "Hey kids, let's go outside and like play." That is really, really meaningful. And again, also really hard to do with ADHD. So we want to think of some ways that we can cue ourselves. It could be a reminder on your phone. Like literally, you could set a reminder every evening that goes off that says, "Hey, is there anything you can do for your partner?" Or like, "Hey, is there anything like messy in the house that you could clean up right now?" Or, "Hey, is there anything you can take off your partner's plate?" Right? If you feel like ADHD is getting in the way of you being able to be proactive, then compensate for that. Because I think more so than like doing the task, it's that lack of proactivity that can be very frustrating for female partners, feeling like they have to tell you or that you won't notice when something needs to be done because it ends up just going back on that mental load, right? The last thing I want to say here is like you have to self-advocate for doing it your way. So just like my client who put the kids to bed in a slightly different way, or my client who needed things put on the walls, like I think it's very legitimate to say, "Listen, I want to help out. I am totally willing to show up as an equal partner. I want to make your life easier, but I have ADHD and the way that you are doing it is not going to work for me. So you can have me do it, but you got to let me do it my own way, or you can do it, but I can't do it your way," if that's the case, right? So in the example of my client who didn't know how to clean the toilet, we figured out that getting secondary cleaning supplies and keeping them in like a caddy in the bathroom, like in the bathroom, was what he needed. And so if his partner had been like, "I don't want more cleaning supplies in the bathroom," that's I think a place where it would have been really appropriate for him to advocate and say like, "Well, that's what I need to be able to show up like you need me to show up." So just kind of on the flip side, don't make it your partner's responsibility to teach or remind you. We've obviously talked about that. Don't assume you understand the context or the how. So don't go into it being like, "Oh, my partner wants couch time. Let me plan out like a whole bunch of series of movies for us to watch." And then your partner still doesn't feel like they're getting what they want. Don't underestimate how hard the task will be, especially if these are tasks that you've never done before when it comes to like childcare, domestic, running of the household. Give it weight. Assume that it's going to be time consuming and tiring. It probably is for her. So if you're like, "Oh, yeah, no, I'll like do the laundry later," right? But then it ends up taking you like 4 hours to do the laundry, but you only gave yourself an hour, so the laundry doesn't get done. That's probably still going to be frustrating for her, right? Don't assume that you will remember or that it will be easy, right? Like I know when our partners are kind of disappointed or frustrated with us, we want to make things better. So we make big promises. "I'll help out more. Like I'll put the kids to bed. I'll do this. I'll do that," right? Like we can make a lot of promises. You got to be able to back that up, right? And with ADHD, know thyself. If you don't tend to notice when the garbage is overflowing, you don't tend to take it out, don't just assume that my good intentions are going to come with me into the future. Let's set alarms. Let's set reminders. Let's actually plan for not remembering because if we set an alarm and we don't need it, great. But like if it's 8 p.m. and you're like chilling, playing a game on the couch and then the alarm goes off and it's like, don't forget to take the garbage out because garbage day is tomorrow. And you're like, oh yeah, right. Like again, I guarantee that like that's going to be something that your partner really appreciates, right? Not having to remind you and the garbage day not getting missed because you took the time to set a reminder for yourself because you are new at remembering to take the garbage out. Of course you will forget, but even if you're not new at it, let me tell you, I never remember garbage day, and every week that the alarm goes off on Google, it's actually tonight. There's an alarm that goes off in our house that says, "Don't forget to put the bins out." I still need that alarm, and I've been doing it my whole life. Don't look for a cookie. So again, if your partner has some of these other issues that we talked about with maybe like some lingering resentment, some, just some reasons that she's not like thrilled that you've started picking up the slack, it can be really disappointing, right? Like you're like, "Hey, you wanted me to do a thing, I'm doing it." And I think it's natural to want your partner to notice and to give you good feedback, and I hope that your partners will. I think positive reinforcement is important. Unfortunately, that is not the case for all of my male clients for whatever reason. And like, usually I don't meet or talk to their partners. So, like, I don't know. I don't know these women. I don't know what's going on with them. But I do know that it's really disappointing and hard for these men when they're trying and they've struggled to get to this point where they're like doing it more. So, like, if she's not giving it to you, you know what? Don't like try to force it. Go to your sources of good validation. Go to your men's group, go to your coach, go to your therapist, go to your friends, like go to someone who is going to notice and give you that credit that you need, because that positive validation is really important with ADT and it's going to help you keep going. Don't dismiss the importance of the task. Like if it's something your partner says is bothering her, I think the last thing you want to do is be like, and unfortunately, just having a lot of female friends, I do see this guys, I'm being honest, I have many female friends who have broken up with their partners or divorced over literally just like an accumulation of these things. He doesn't help pack the lunches. He doesn't like pick up the kid from school. He like when it's his night to take care of the kid, he just puts him in front of the TV. He doesn't even take him to the park. Like he doesn't do the laundry, blah, blah, blah. These things are important and meaningful for all the reasons I described, right? When women are taking on more of the emotional labor and the mental load, it is exhausting and it leads to resentment. And if she is telling you that this is important to her, that you do it more, it really is. Like, please believe that it's important and don't dismiss, like, well, whatever, that's not important. Maybe it's not important to you, it's important to her. And like, again, I've just had so many female friends who have tried to make their male partners aware of this. And eventually they just throw their hands in the air and leave. And we see that one of the biggest things that leads to breakup in hetero couples is like resentment and the like domestic chores and that kind of thing. Like it matters. Don't try to do things in an ADC unfriendly way, right? Like if she can remember it just because she remembers to do it all the time, or you don't think you should need a reminder. If you need a reminder, you need a reminder. If you need to do it on body doubling, if you need validation, if you need check-ins and accountability with somebody, like find a way to do it that is going to allow you to show up. Do it whatever way you need to do it. Don't get into the shoulds. Oh, I should need to. I should need. Like sometimes I literally like have to set an alarm to remind me to like play with my kid or walk my dog. Right? I've had a dog for 10 years. I love my dog. I will forget to walk that freaking dog if I don't set an alarm sometime, right? I think of myself as a good dog owner. If I was a good dog owner, I would just remember that my dog is a living being that needs walks and stimulation, but I don't, right? And I've just let go of any shame around that because now I walk my freaking dog all the time, right? Do it in a ADC friendly way. Couple of resources for you guys on this. If you don't know how to clean things, there's a great YouTube channel called Clean My Space. If you are struggling to figure out how to share the domestic load, I cannot recommend enough the Fair Play deck, which is like go to the website and watch the video about what the Fair Play deck is. It basically gamifies and makes visual the mental load, like I talked about. I think it is so helpful in helping couples have conversations about domestic responsibilities, and definitely have family meetings or couples meetings between you and your partner, because that is a good time to sit down and say, I don't know where you keep the cleaning supplies, or like, what is it about this that doesn't seem to be making things better? Because we were fighting about this last month and now I'm doing it all the time and you're still mad. What's going on there, right? Pre-arranged meetings are a great way to be able to hash out some of these issues. Lastly, in terms of therapy, I don't know how many people here are Canadian, but there's a wonderful, wonderful therapist. Her name is Christina Crow. I'm pretty sure she invented it, is a kind of therapy called AART, ADC, Adapted Relational Therapy. but she makes a lot of content. She has a podcast. So that's Christina Crow there. And then over here, Melissa Orlov, she's written these two books about ADHD on effect on marriage. And she also does group coaching. So if it's more of like a therapeutic thing that you guys need to work through together, there are like ADHD sort of appropriate therapeutic modalities. And I'm done. I sorry that I talked really fast. Hopefully you guys got all that.
So first off, I love these things because my wife and I have been on this journey for going on 8 years. She's the super high functioning special education teacher, and I'm the special education child, right? But she's never treated me that way. And she's always been really robust in how she approaches things. And she has that certain mindset of a teacher, but she also had a strong sense of boundaries. And a lot of the work that we've done has been about reestablishing those boundaries as we needed to adjust everything, but making it fair. And so one of the things that you were talking about with the validation part, right? Don't expect to get validation from your partner. That was something I learned early on from therapy. And I said, okay, but I really do appreciate feeling appreciated. Like that's like a recognition, response, euphoria thing that's out there about that kind of stuff. And they're like, yes, that's fine. Let's build up first, get to a place where your spouse is not feeling so pressured, and then let's start introducing that advocacy for a validation. And that was one of those things that was a game changer for us, because we finally got to a point where she was like, I'm really fully comfortable in making sure that you feel validated. How can I do that? Right. And she was in a space to do it. And that was
Yeah.
like milestone, right? That was like, oh shit, this is a great time. So I really appreciated that.
I have sort of like two perspectives on this because certainly like coming from it as the coach, when I see a client be able to start doing something, I'm very hopeful that their partner will notice and give them validation because I'm super proud of them. I know how hard it was. On the other hand, like again, sort of as a woman and a mom, like one of the things we see, like there's this shared experience that mothers have that they share online, which is like, oh, you see a dad, he takes his kid to the park, and everyone's like, oh my God, what a good dad. You're such a good dad. But then the mom is meanwhile doing like everything else, packing the lunches, doing the whatever, and she's like overburdened. And so she might give the kids like the phone to shut them up for 5 minutes. And then people are like immediately, people are very quick to judge women as bad mothers and very quick to give praise to dads, right? And so I think sometimes it's also that thing where it's like, yes, you should get validation, but like also, what about the fact that your female partner has been doing this and more and everything every single day, and nobody's given her any medals or nobody's giving her any recognition? And she's just like, so sometimes it comes from that place of like, I don't want to give you validation because like you haven't noticed all the years that I've had to do everything and you've taken me
Mm-hmm.
for granted. And again, I'm not saying that that's right or fair, but I think that that's maybe what's happening for some of these women, is that it's hard for them to they can't get over that that feeling of like, but I've had to do all this for so long and nobody gives me any validation kind of a thing.
Yeah, that goes back to the resentment that you were talking about. And that situation, like a lot of that resentment is built up frustration and things like that. And of course, the bar that we set for, ourselves, right? We think we're doing great. It, may be based on trauma. Like if I'm not, like a big one for me is like, as long as I'm not hitting my children like my dad hit me, right? We also need to take into consideration, where are they setting their bar at for needing validation and getting that kind of stuff done. Another thing that you said, it made me laugh, because in about 45 minutes, my alarm's going to go off on my Alexa to remind me to go make sure my wife has everything she needs for the kids. And then I come back and do another meeting. And it's okay to use Alexa or your home things to remind you to do things. Alexa reminds me to do all my chores. And
Yes.
every week and month, I sit down and my wife and I go over the chores and go over the groceries and go over menus and have these family meetings where we can have those discussions. And that is like our Sunday evening meetings. And we just kind of break things down. And I'm telling you right now, that's been a game changer for us. So it's really cool to have these kind of talks with people like you who have gone through so much of this kind of stuff and talk about it and feel the validation of, I'm doing a lot of these things. Cool. I can still do better. And there's some really good content there, but it does feel good to recognize the validation there. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a question that came in through the chat, and then I will start with Mark after that. You talked earlier about how the partner may have strict systems or other person is so used to doing it a certain way. My wife only wants me to do things a very specific way, but I keep trying to get her to understand that I can do it a different way and still be done right. It's like if it's not done exactly how she does it, then it's not done, even if I did it well, in my opinion.
Yeah, so there's
Not
something
really a
called,
question, but yeah.
and I'm going to put this back in the context of parenting because there's something called maternal gatekeeping. There's a term called maternal gatekeeping, which is where like women as mothers tend to feel like they are the bosses of child rearing. And so things have to be done to their standard. And again, like there's reasons why this happened, right? Like when we first pop out a baby and our male partners are like, ugh, I don't know how to change a diaper, and it all falls on us. Like it's pretty easy for us to start being like, okay, I'll do everything. But at the same time, something about being a divorced co-parent has taught me that actually there's no right or wrong way to parent or to keep a home. And like when you live with another person in a home, you both live in that home, you both have needs, you both have ways of being, and those are both valid. And it may be hard for your partner to accept that, but it is true. And so like with my client who put the kids to bed a little later than his wife would have wanted, he is that child's other parent, and the way that he parents, as long as he's not harming those children, is legitimate, right? So something about being divorced is like you don't have control over the way your co-parent parents your child, and unless they're causing your child harm and you're going to like call social services, like you have to let go a little bit and you have to accept like that is that child's other parent, and what they think is like a good way, like what they do as a parent is just as valid as what I'm doing as a parent. And I think the same thing does apply to like domestic partnerships in the home, right? Like obviously there has to be some negotiation and hopefully we can find healthy ways to communicate our needs and boundaries, but like your way of needing your home set up or doing things in your home or cleaning your home is no less right or wrong than hers, even if she makes you feel that way. Like, and so we have to have conversations about that. And I think that's where like advocating as a person with ADHD can come into it, because when we start to be able to explain why we need these things and how our brains work, and like that the person is going to be happy with the outcome, right? Like if we can kind of create a compelling argument, advocate for ourselves, hopefully we can find something that's going to work, right? Like, okay, if you want me to do XYZ, I can absolutely do that, but I need to do it this way. And if you are not going to let me do it this way, then I think it's, I'm just saying, and you can tell them, you can say, blame it on Dusty. I think it's legit to say, well, then I can't do it. You want it done? Here's how I'm going to do it. If that's not good enough for you and I can't, you're not going to let me do it that way, or you're not going to accept that I'm doing that way, then I can't, right? Because I have ADHD and this is how I do it.
Yeah, that's kind of
I'm gonna get hordes of angry women sending me emails after this. But it's
uh,
just the truth. I'm sorry, ladies. It's just the truth. People got to be allowed to do things in their own way, and you are not more right or wrong than anyone else.
yeah, that's like my wife and I like had to work out the whole laundry thing. And for me, like I could never figure out why I couldn't stand doing laundry. But it comes down to like having to fold and put away laundry. That's the part that really drives me bonkers. And so we made the agreement that I will do everything up to that point and then she can take over it from there. And she said, that's fine, but you have to do the dishes every night. Like that's the compromise that we had to come to from that. But it was just like, you know, she had to get past that. Okay, Shane doesn't do it the same way I do. And okay, what will I accept? He's not going to put the laundry away the way I need it, then I will do that part, but he's going to do the rest. Then that's the
Yeah.
expectation. We set it in those weekly meetings when we sit down, we talk about chores and stuff like that. So yeah,
Well, and like, yeah, what's equal isn't fair, right? Like, it doesn't have to be, if something's easy for you to do with ADHD, it's not hard for you to do it, then do more of that. And if something's really, really hard, like for some reason, it's really often hard for a lot of people with ADHD to take out the garbage. If taking out the garbage is like a level 10 task for you, but there's like six other things you could do that are like level one tasks, maybe you should do those six things and she takes out the garbage or vice, you know what I mean? And like I also don't fold my laundry. I keep it in big bins. I take all the doors off my closet. I when I get the laundry, I dump it out. I sort it into piles. It all goes in bins. That's how I also do my child's laundry. And I have a boyfriend. He doesn't live with me. He hates it because he folds all his laundry meticulously, right? But like first of all, it's not his laundry. Let's say that we live together, we would have to have separate laundry because he wouldn't be able to deal with the fact that I don't fold my laundry. He tried folding my laundry at first, like he would fold it for me, and then eventually he just gave up because I don't care that it's folded. So if we live together, we would have probably have separate like places to keep our laundry, and he could fold his and I would not fold mine because that's how I'm going to do it. I'm not going to fold laundry just because somebody else thinks that I should.
God, I
And
want a study done on putting away laundry and how prevalent it is in ADHD. I hear it a lot.
it's a thing.
I don't
I
know
just
if
want to say one thing before we move on with questions. I also want to say, like, again, that like a lot of the things I'm talking about are like not people's fault. Like, for example, there are still so many bathrooms, men's bathrooms, that don't have changing tables, right? Like, how are you going to be an equal parent when you can't even change your baby? Like, I've heard from so many male friends that they're like changing their babies on the dirty floor of men's bathrooms, right? I hear that a lot of my male partners with ADHD that are my clients, that they're very lonely as dads, that they don't have community. It's very easy. There's lots of mom groups. Like, as a mom, it's just kind of expected that you're going to like gel with other moms, but like it's not still not that way for dads, and men, men face different issues like loneliness and having to work through kind of like this idea that there's something wrong about being like nurturing and caregiving. So I just want to take a minute to also acknowledge that for a lot of these things, like when I talk about gender socialization, I'm generally speaking using a feminist lens, and I do think that a feminist lens also deals with the way that gender norms harm men. So I just want to acknowledge that.
yeah. Totally understand that. Mark, you got a question.
Yeah. Hi, Dusty. First of all, this event was amazing. I'm fully convinced if you were a rapper and just did all that, there would have been like a mic drop and like cool walk away at the end with everybody blown away in the audience. But
Emotional labor.
yeah, but my question is a little bit more on the self-advocacy side of things. What we see a lot of in our community is, and I've dealt with this in my personal life, but like men in relationships who struggle with keeping up with chores, parenting the kid, helping the kid with homework, like some of the day-to-day stuff that I guess neurotypicals may struggle a little less with. Typically, that is met with nagging to an extent that's understandable, right? Because a lot of those things can be frustrating for the partner as well. So I do want to acknowledge that. But a lot of men struggle with the idea of having the conversation about like it's not what you say, but how you say it, right? I guess my question to you is how do you approach that type of discussion around language, keeping in mind some of the traditional factors of like toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Well, and like I'm well known for being a hothead myself, right? So when
yeah,
emotional regulation comes into it and like emotions are running high and sometimes we just express ourselves strongly. So I do think like tools like the Fair Play deck can be really helpful because they provide a framework. I think relationship check-ins can be really helpful. So with a relationship check-in, you can find questions online that will lead you through talking about some of these things, right? So some of the
right.
questions we see for relationship check-ins are stuff like, is there anything that I used to do that I'm not doing as much anymore that makes you feel like appreciated and loved, right? And so some of these starter structures can probably diffuse a lot of the underlying issues that might be cluttering up this stuff. But in terms of just like advocating for yourself as a person with ADHD in a way that isn't like threatening to your partner or like overwhelming, there are some communication tools that you can learn. So first of all, like everybody should know about nonviolent communication
Yeah.
because especially when you're communicating with your partner, it's so hard to get out of the like the well, you da 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 and you da 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 da, you always, I never, you never, right? So nonviolent communication as a framework is very, very helpful. There's a really great coach I love named Cami Orange. She does boundaries. She's a
Yep.
boundaries coach, and she has these boundaries flashcards that you can download where you can state things in a really assertive way and let your boundaries be known without it being out of hand. So, like, again, I'm just going to use myself as an example. My boyfriend doesn't live with me, and I have a school age child, and he has a child that's older than me. So, he's already kind of been through a lot of the parenting stuff that I've been through. And one of the things that really drives him nuts is my daughter's always late to school, almost always, right? Because it's really hard for us to transition and get out of the house in the morning. We live far from the school. So, he's always like, oh, you should be getting her to school on time, and like, da 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 da. And he knows why, right? And he's not trying to be a jerk or anything.
Mhm.
But finally, I used one of the phrases from these cards. I said to him, that's not a priority for me right now. I just said, that's not a priority for me. I don't feel, I don't have the same value as you around getting her to school on time. That's not a priority for me. Right. And
Yeah.
like, you guys, you people, you can say that, right? Like, hopefully, some of these conversations about what's important and what we value are happening earlier in the relationship. And even if
Yeah.
they haven't, the Fair Play deck does a good job of like helping people not just talk about what, but why. And you don't have to buy this thing online. You can like look at it and kind of get the sense for how it works. But like, we want to figure out why these things matter to our partner. And that's going to give us more of a sense of like how to approach managing what the real issue is and like what it means to that person and like what's really important about the task to them. And I think that will make it easier for you to advocate for yourself and then find a compromise. So I think the boundaries flashcards by Cami Orange are great, nonviolent communication. And then there's a DBT skill called Dear Man, which I think is really helpful. So really quickly, you can Google it, guys, but it's like an acronym. So D stands for describe, E stands for explain, A stands for ask, and R stands for, I can't remember what, but it's like basically sell them on it. So describe. Oh, when you tell me that I can't put any notes up on the walls to remind myself of things that I want to do, I often forget to do the things that you've asked me. Explain. Like explain how it makes you feel. That is really frustrating because I'm trying to do better, right? I'm trying to show up here. I want you to be happy. And then I feel like you're kind of like cutting me off at the knees because you want me to do it, but you don't want me to do the things that are going to help me do it.
Yeah.
A is for ask. So listen, I know you don't want the walls to look messy, but what if I printed out a list of things that I want to do and put it in a very tidy frame so that it looked like artwork? Or what if I have a whiteboard, but I'm going to keep it in the bedroom, right? Ask for whatever it is that you're asking for. And then R, I can't remember what it stands for, but basically sell them on it, right? This is where you're going to go. Because look, it's frustrating for us to have this conversation over and over. And unfortunately, like, if I could do better without needing visual cues, then I would. I'm really not doing better because I just don't care. I really need this tool to do better. So if you want me to do better, we're going to have to find a way that I can have the tool that I need. So what do you think? Would this work? Right?
Love it.
The Dear Man structure, and then MAN stands for some other stuff. You guys can look it up. But I don't know. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, no, you
Yeah.
nailed it. That was great, definitely. Cool.
Got Brian.
Brian has a question.
Go ahead, Brian.
Well, thanks. And thanks, Dusty. This has been fantastic. And you kind of touched on a couple of aspects of my question, but you just mentioned hopefully we'll work out those priorities early on in the relationship. So, I'm a parent of two young kids and just constantly living in survival mode because of the way my brain works. And I feel like there are opportunities to maybe not do some things that my partner thinks are important. So maybe sending out holiday pictures is really important to my partner. And I think that's insane. That's going to take us an extra 10 hours and we're already exhausted and stressed. Like, why are we going to do that? Let's not do that. And, I can think of a lot of examples right now. Being ADHD, I don't get dopamine from a lot of things that my partner gets dopamine from. So what are some ways we can approach these things where it's like, yeah, I get that you want me to do that, but like, I can't do anything more than I'm doing right now.
Yeah, good question. And so like, again, I'm going to kind of point back to like all the pressure that society puts on women to do things in a certain way. I think that like really validating that person is like the first step, right? Being like, you really want to send out holiday cards. Like sending out holiday cards feels really important to you, right? Don't start off with your argument like, oh, that's crazy. Like that's one more thing, right? Acknowledge like, there's something about this that's meaningful to her. And it could just be, social pressure. Like she feels like it's a should. It could be that she, why? Why is this so important to her? Where is she coming from? And like really seek to understand like what that means to her, because the fact that it's not happening is like causing her some distress, right? So we want to like, I think, lead with empathy and be like, it's really distressing to you that we are not sending out holiday cards, right? And I think like just validating that it is important and making that woman feel like not crazy and like heard and cared about will go like 80% of the way to like getting to a reasonable solution. Cause like, I don't know about you guys, but especially with like ADHD, like when I get in my head that like I'm going to do a thing, I'm going to do a certain way, like it's just like, it's hard to talk me out of it. And so just having somebody be like, you really want this. Okay, then it's a lot easier for me to hear like, and it's not really reasonable, right? And so I think that conversation can go a lot of different directions after that validation happens. That you're like, this is something that's important to you. I see why. Tell me why you care about this. Tell me what this means to you. Where, like, is this coming from a place of your values? Is this coming from a place of like shame and guilt? Like you feel like it's like reflects badly on you if we don't do it? Like, what is this about? Let me understand. And then from there, it can be like, okay, can we find a solution that is less energy or something that still kind of does the same thing? Or, another direction the conversation could go is like, I understand this is important to you. it's not important to me. And unfortunately, like I am just too maxed out. It's not, you know, if I had extra energy, sure. But like I just can't commit to that. And so if you want to do it, you go ahead. But like I cannot take this on. I will not be doing holiday cards. Like I'm not going to stop you, but I can't say yes to it, right? Like you can put your foot down and say, this is not a thing I'm going to do. I mean, I can't promise what that outcome is going to look like. But the thing is, like, we're allowed, as adults, we're allowed to have boundaries even if we are ADHD adults who have effed up a lot, like even if we have historically not pulled our weight, even if we have historically struggled, even if historically we have been the like problematic ones in the relationships, we are still allowed to have boundaries. You don't have to be perfect before you get to have boundaries. You get to have boundaries now. Even if your other person doesn't like it. I'm going to be getting a lot of angry emails from women after this. But like seriously, guys, you can say that's not a priority for me. I'm not able to do that. I'm sorry. I wish I could. Right. And so that's one direction it could go. Maybe you guys can figure it out together. Maybe after feeling heard about it, she herself is able to let it go. Sometimes for me, like, I have to also just be like, yeah, you're right. Like, I probably like, I have too much on my plate right now. I probably shouldn't take that on. But like, just like being able to talk about why it's important to me, like, makes me feel cared about enough that I'm like more willing to like put my guns down and be like, okay, fine. Right. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think if you lead with like trying to understand where this person's coming from, there's a lot of places you could go from there.
Yeah, no, I think that was a great response and really helpful. Thanks.
Dusty, this has been awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on. Just real quick plug, can you let everybody know where to find you? Anything that you've got
Yeah.
special coming up soon?
Oh yeah, that was the last slide. There's a slide. I have many websites and I'm on the socials. You can find me. I have a new coaching group starting next month and there's still room in it. It's a very cost-effective way of doing coaching with me. So if you guys are interested in group coaching, you can hit me up. I have a podcast which is called Translating ADHD. I have a sort of like an online community that you can be part of. It's called ADHD Studio, adhdstudio.ca. And yeah, I don't know. You can follow me on all the social media.
Yeah. And all of that'll be in the notes and everything in the doobly-doo below. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. And
Yeah, thanks for
really
having me.
appreciate